All right.
It's you.
I rescued the gavel for you.
Oh, thank you.
It was missing.
It's missing.
Yeah, it was hidden.
The gavel was hidden.
Yeah, the city clerk couldn't even find it.
I was going to be completely out of control because you couldn't gavel me away.
Yeah, luckily I found it.
Luckily, yeah, you were.
That hurts.
You got your manicured hands, can't do that kind of stuff. You got to be careful. Todd, what new doctorate do you have this week? Just let the mayor know.
Brain surgeon would be good.
Well, that's good. Hey, way to choose big, man. That's,
Okay. Here comes Martin. He's been in after me.
Yeah.
I know. We should give you a cookie or something, Steve.
I need a cookie. No, I don't.
your suit says different. Just saying.
You resemble that.
Hey, a fat guy can talk that way to other fat guys. I just say.
That was wrong. Yeah, I've fallen very short of my goal.
Me too.
was
It's so
above the
cold
belt.
out, man. I can't even walk anymore. I mean,
That was totally above the belt.
It was above the belt. It's all above the belt.
I can hear the belt from here.
Hanging over the
Well, it's hanging over the belt. It's just partially below.
All right, it is now 7
Doesn't lack the
p.m.
belt.
No, it's not quite 7 p.m. According to the clock, the unofficial clock is.
It's
Oh, there it is. 7
Yeah.
p.m.
Yep.
It's now 7 p.m. in Gardner, Kansas. I am calling the Gardner City Council meeting to order. Please rise with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We have some business to perform this evening, quite a bit as a matter of fact, so we'll just get started. We're going to start with a public hearing. The public hearing has to do with the proposed community improvement district for Main Street Marketplace. That is the only topic of discussion for the public hearing. This was put in notice, was it 2 meetings ago? Or 1 meeting ago for this, and was posted on media, including the paper of record. And so I would entertain a motion to hold the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Moore, that we hold a public hearing on the proposed community and improvement district for Main Street Marketplace. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstention? The public hearing is now open. If you wish to come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Keep within the 5-minute time limit. No profanities, no personal attacks.
Mayor, Matthew Wool, Finance Director of City of Gardner. I'd like to start off with, we have a lot of things on the agenda for Price Chopper. So I asked both Bond Counsel Tyler Ellsworth, also Financial Advisor Bruce Kimmel to be here tonight to give a quick presentation of the overall project. That way they can address all the items on the agenda for Price Chopper.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think the developer may want to make a brief presentation about, just recap the project improvements, and they're going to speak first.
All right.
Okay. Well, in that case, it probably makes sense for me and Bruce to go ahead.
Okay. That didn't count against your 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Amy, does that work for you? All right. Mayor and Council, Tyler Ellsworth with the law firm Kutak Rock, the city's bond counsel. We've been working on the negotiations with supermarket developers for the Main Street Marketplace project. And I'm joined, as Matt said, by Bruce Kimmel with Ellers, your municipal advisor, and also my colleague is attending this evening, Adrian Serene, who's been assisting on these proceedings. This is, of course, a public hearing for the CID. So we will start just with a brief overview of what the CID itself entails.
And is your microphone turned on, Bruce?
Is it on?
Don't. Oh, yeah, sorry, Bruce. That's Bruce. That's Tyler. Sorry. Oh, now it's on.
Is it?
Okay.
All right. Is that better?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure you were heard for the purposes of the folks at
Joel
home.
just walked in. Actually, let me see if the developer is prepared to make their remarks, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, all right.
Joel, do that. That's right. Walk right in and step right up.
Hey,
Nothing like a little pressure.
no pressure.
This is old hat for him anyway.
I just locked my keys in my car. I apologize, I'm late.
Good evening, Joel. Name and address for the record.
Joel Riggs, 5000 Kansas Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, supermarket developers. On behalf of the applicant, apologize, counsel. I literally did just lock my keys in my truck, so I had to have somebody come pick me up. I'm going to go into, is this loaded?
Yes, that screen is just not working.
Oh. Yeah, it's not. I won't go into a whole lot of great detail. You guys know a little bit about this, but I do want to touch base on a little bit of this just for the record. Development Team Supermarket Developers is a subsidiary of AWG. Most of you know that the wholesaler is groceries. We do development projects on behalf of our retailers in order to generate new stores, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. Experience, we've done this all over the country, literally, and this is something that we do every day. Building new grocery stores anywhere from 10,000 to 80,000 square foot stores. There's a Price Chopper we did in Ottawa, Woods Grocery we did in Sunrise Beach, and a Price Chopper I did in Fort Scott, Kansas. The project and the reason we're here tonight is really to talk about the TIF and the CID. The total project size is about 19 acres, redevelopment project that's focused on basically 3 phases. The existing grocery store, which we will redevelop, the new grocery store, which we'll start right off the front, and then the existing small shops and the commercial pad sites. Which many of you are familiar with this, but again, I'll go through it just for clarity. The 2 areas in white that are outside of the project district are Quick Trip on the left of your screen and Walgreens on the right. In the orange is the existing Price Chopper, the green is the existing small shops, and in the blue is the proposed new grocery store and one of the new pad sites. And like I said, it's going to be real quick for me tonight because I really just want to talk, let you guys ask questions if you have any. We did load the proposed elevations. These were approved by your planning commission going back into October, I believe. So the one thing I do want to say that this has been a process getting to this point. We've had a lot of collaboration with your staff, with your professional consultants. A good opportunity for us, a good opportunity for the city of Gardner. A lot of negotiation back and forth. This has been a good, solid process where I think the city is getting the project that they want, and ultimately the developer, us, we're getting the project we want as well. So I think there's a lot of great collaboration, a lot of teamwork, and ultimately to get to the point tonight, which is you guys have been waiting for a while. But this has been a complex project, and getting to that completion point literally as of last week. So happy to answer any questions that you do have. I apologize again for being tardy.
Thank you. We'll probably hold on questions until later, but thank you.
Happy to do it. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so Bruce and I will resume and we'll just touch briefly on the details of the CID and then take a step back and look at some of sort of the bigger picture items. Briefly touch on the process for all the incentives that we've been through so far to get to this point. Talk a little bit about the terms of the development agreement itself and take a look at the developer's original ask and what those incentives were based on what's reflected in the agreement that's in your packet this evening. So the CID itself is the entire shopping center. As Joel just said, we're not including the Quick Trip or the Walgreens, but essentially the rest of the shopping center, the new grocery store, the existing small shops, and the renovated grocery store are all included in that CID. The CID will be financed through a 1% add-on sales tax. So all retail sales in that shopping center will pay that tax. That tax will be imposed for up to a 22-year term, and that tax will be used to reimburse the developers' redevelopment costs. And so we will consider issuing special obligation bonds, and we'll be back to you probably in 2020 to look at that. That's kind of up in the air right now. but we have a plan, sort of a process for looking at that when the time comes. And I would note that the reimbursement from the CID sales tax includes the developer's cost for vertical construction. That's one of the key differences between a CID and a TIF. You can't fund vertical construction with the TIF. You can do so for CID. So that wraps up the CID kind of in a nutshell. I'm going to skip the project overview because you just got that from the developer. In terms of the big picture, so if we talk about what the total incentive package is that is being negotiated here between the city and supermarket developers, there's a TIF component, and the TIF is a reimbursement from property tax increment of certain costs that the developer has incurred, things like putting the new access drives in, potentially a signal on Main Street, putting new infrastructure in for stormwater detention, things like that. That's what the TIF will pay for. The CID is a completely separate piece. It's a separate incentive, and that's financed, as I just mentioned, through a 1% add-on sales tax for up to 22 years. That can be on a pay-go basis or through the issuance of special obligation bonds, which we'll get to. And the third piece of the incentive package is industrial revenue bonds. There's no property tax abatement associated with these bonds. They would be issued probably in 2020 and just be outstanding for a short period of time. That gives a developer a sales tax exemption on their construction materials. I should emphasize that for both the special obligation CID bonds we're talking about and the IRBs, there's no guarantee and no backing by the city for these bonds. This is not your general obligation bond where it's backed by your full faith and credit and you're going to levy taxes to pay them back. This is a completely separate credit, completely separate concept. So I just wanted to highlight that. Basically, the way these incentives are structured to work on the TIF and the CID components is that the developer says they're going to build improvements that are going to generate revenues, and they will collect whatever they can generate subject to certain limits on the time that those incentives are in place and dollar amounts that they can collect. Just to recap the proceedings briefly to this point, we of course have separate proceedings for the TIF, separate proceedings for the CID, and separate proceedings for the IRB. You may recall that a TIF incentive is put in place in essentially two steps. The first step is to create the TIF district, which in this case is the entirety of the shopping center. The TIF district boundary is the same as the CID boundary. So it's the same pieces of property. And so it was back in October, at your October 5th council meeting, that we put that TIF district in place. TIF districts are comprised of one or more project and project areas. In this case, we have three project areas. What you're being asked to consider tonight, later in the agenda, is approval of the TIF project for project area 1, which is the new grocery store. So that's where we are on the TIF proceedings. The CID proceedings are simpler. Essentially, you conduct a hearing and approve an ordinance, and that's what's before you this evening. Of course, we're here in the CID hearing itself. And then the IRBs are kind of a two-step process. There's a resolution of intent that basically expresses the city's intent to issue IRBs at a later date. Down the road, once the project has been constructed a bit, we will probably look at issuing those IRBs based on a request from the developer, probably in the middle of 2020 or so. So that's hopefully some clarity on what we've done so far and what's got us to this point. And I'm going to turn it over to Bruce to talk a little bit about the incentive requests and where we got to in the negotiations.
Thanks, Tom.
Good evening.
Evening, Bruce.
So you might recall that the developer originally came with a request for 3 forms of tax incentives in addition to the IRB financing that Tyler mentioned. They requested property tax increment, sales tax increment, and the CID. And you'll recall that we had some discussions about how each of those tools might work, and the tools that had more inherent value to the city because of their flexibility than other tools. So you'll recall that CID, we advised you, and I think you agreed that CID, because it's a tax that they're adding onto themselves, was something that you were willing to negotiate with, in large part because you can't really use a CID on your own without their participation. Property tax, while it includes taxes that the city would be generating on your mill rate. It also captures other taxes, and so there's sort of a community benefit there, and that's a tool that is also has a lot of bang for the buck. And then sales tax is obviously one that has the most flexibility, and as much as possible, we felt it was appropriate to try to limit the use of that. So we looked at their need for incentives. We had a lot of discussions, a lot of back and forth about how best to structure this to work for both the developer and what they were looking to do, as well as for the city. And we came up with an alternative. Well, so let me just review. They were looking for about a total of $4.7 million between property and sales TIF, estimating to take about 11 years, but they wanted authorization for the full 20 years. And then you can see the CID was going to take about roughly 18 years or so to reach the $4.5 million target. Then what we've negotiated is a package that eliminates the sales tax altogether. The property TIF term is a little confusing perhaps in that it looks like it's 12 years and it's really only 10 years from when they open. So they'll open in the spring or summer of 2020, and the hard and fast end date on that pay-as-you-go property TIF will be the summer of 2030. And then we've really maximized the use of the CID with their proposed financing, looking that would take about 17 years to pay off, and then you can see the last 5 years of what we call tails would be available to them on a pay-as-you-go basis. If the bonds are actually paid off on that timeline, then they could still receive some CID revenues on a reimbursement basis for the last 5 years of the 22-year term. So all in all, they still have the ability, the motivation and the opportunity to collect nearly the same amount of total assistance and participation, but through very different mechanisms, and we feel that this really gives them the proper motivation and incentives to get up and going as quickly as possible, to really maximize that CID revenue, and to achieve their targets through the CID primarily, and then with the property TIF. We turn it back over to Tyler to talk about some of the milestones coming up.
So briefly, just to touch on the milestones that are in the agreement that you're being asked to consider this evening, there's an October 1st goal of this year for the developers to start construction of the new grocery store. There is a goal or a deadline essentially of December 31st of 2020 to complete the new grocery store, and if special obligation bonds will be issued to complete the improvements to the inline shops. And so those would be parking lot improvements and certain other improvements on that property. And then there's an outside date of March 31st of 2022, which is sort of the third phase of things, to complete the improvements to renovate the existing Price Chopper and get new retail tenants in there. The other item that was of importance to us was making sure that the maintenance standards for the shopping center were defined and that there was some mechanism there to enforce those, and we've had discussions with the developer about that, so that's in the agreement as well. And finally, the last item that I wanted to touch on are just the conditions when we get there in 2020 to issuing the special obligation bonds. There are certain protections that we put in place to make sure that the city is protected. Even though this isn't a pledge of your full faith and credit, there's certain things to think about, and we can talk about this more once we get a little farther down the road and we get to that point in the process. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, anyone else who wishes to speak during this public hearing period? Seeing no one else coming forward, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Public hearing is now closed. Now it's time for public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. We just had a public hearing on the CID for Main Street Marketplace, so that is not going to be a subject of this particular time period. But if you wish to speak on any other topics, You are free to come forward, state your name and address for the record. Again, 5-minute time limit, no personal attacks and no profanity. And the floor is now open. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there any member of the council wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 4.
Number 4. Okay. Anyone else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion on consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 pass. Consent agenda item number 4, consider authorizing the mayor and city administrator to sign KDOT Form 1302 for the Center Street Sidewalk Project. Councilmember Gorsick.
I just want to understand a little more about the Form 1302
Okay.
with reference to the MARC project.
Yeah, so the project was originally identified as part of the Main Street corridor,
Okay.
and we submitted for funding for that project through MARC, and basically it's along Center Street and goes up and over the bridge and connects to the trail going south. And this form simply starts the process through KDOT. So we were awarded the funding through MARC, and then this is just housekeeping with KDOT to keep the project moving.
So it doesn't affect the funding then?
No, not
Okay.
other than keeping it moving forward.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion on
So
consent
moved.
agenda item number 4.
Second.
Motion Gregorczyk, second Moore, that we authorize the mayor and city administrator to sign KDOT Form 1302 for Center Street Sidewalk Project. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Consent agenda item number 4 passes. Just a note on order, by the way, there is going to be an executive session added to the agenda just before old business to discuss attorney-client privileged information. I just wanted to make sure that the folks in the gallery as well as online know that that is coming. Committee recommendations. Committee recommendation item number 1, consider an ordinance approving rezoning. The rezoning code is Z-18-07 for 1000 East Santa Fe Street from M2, or General Industrial District, to M1, Restricted Industrial. I believe, oh, hello, Kelly.
Hello.
You snuck up there for me. This is having to do with the property over by the Gardner Auto Body, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So I was supposed to wait for my prompt, huh? I failed already.
I'd like to say hello. Nice to see you, Kelly.
Well, good evening,
Good
Mayor
evening.
and Council.
Yes.
Kelly Drake Woodward, Chief Planner, presenting on behalf of Director Larry Powell. And this is committee recommendation number 1, rezoning for 1000 East Santa Fe Street. The request originated from the property owner, who's a local business owner. He has an online retail distribution business for pet supplies, currently located on the site. He wants to expand the business to include on-site retail. So this is almost 2-acre site that you'll see in the black hash marks. The blue is the area that we sent the notice to. It is bisected by a drainage way. The adjacent parcels that are developed are currently in use for personal storage, daycare centers, a vet clinic, and a car dealership. And the adjacent vacant parcels that are, the vacant ones, some of them are planned for personal storage and flex retail service space that's already underway. And then part of it's an ag use that's awaiting a future plan. They are currently zoned, as you can see, a mix of C2 and C3 commercial districts and also M2 industrial. So this application is actually proposing to downzone to a lesser intense industrial district, going from general industrial to restricted industrial. And Consequently, it's also consistent with the Gardner Main Street Corridor Plan, which designated this parcel for commercial and light industrial future land use, not heavy industrial or heavy commercial. So the rezoning will not only accommodate the local business owners' expansion, it will also make the property consistent with the comprehensive plan. The site is also better suited for a more small-scale industrial or commercial use because it's a small parcel. And so at their meeting on January 29th, the Planning Commission held a public hearing. No members of the public spoke. The 6 members present, they unanimously recommended that you approve this rezoning. There were no conditions suggested. So it's recommended that you adopt ordinance 2600, changing the zoning classification from M2 General Industrial District to M1 Restricted Industrial.
Great. And
That's all
the
I have.
applicant's here this evening?
I'm sorry?
Is the applicant here this evening to speak?
I don't think so. They're
Okay.
pretty shy at the first ones.
Okay, thank you. Any public comment on committee recommendation item number 1? Seeing none, any questions or comments for Kelly? Okay, this will be quick. All right, then I entertain a motion on committee recommendation item number 1.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Moore, that we adopt ordinance 2600, correct? Stating that, or changing the zoning classifications or districts of certain lands located in the city of Gardner, Kansas, under the authority granted by Title 17 of the Municipal Code of the city of Gardner. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Committee recommendation, item number 1 passes. All right, here's where we're going to be adding that little executive session. I need a motion for an executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Winters,
Showed you.
that we recess into executive session for consultation with an attorney which is deemed to be privileged in the attorney-client relationship pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to discuss matters related to the Main Street Marketplace redevelopment project beginning at 7:25 p.m. And how many minutes do we need, council? 10 minutes? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's timed.
10, that council. Oh, that council, okay. 10 minutes, Tyler? Okay, great. Beginning at 7:25 and ending at 7:35 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? We stand in recess. Okay. And I'll entertain a motion to resume regular session.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Winters, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, any abstentions? We are back in regular session. Let's move on to old business. This is a item that was removed from the agenda 2 meetings back and now is coming back before the body. We're considering a resolution declaring the intent of the city of Gardner, Kansas to issue industrial revenue bonds in the approximate principal amount of $19,390,000 for the purpose of financing a portion of the cost of the acquisition, construction, and equipping of a commercial facility within the city, namely the Main Street Marketplace. I think we've already had a discussion on this as part of the CID public hearing. I will open the floor for public comment. If anyone wishes to make an additional comment on this particular item, please be in the interest of brevity and keeping people from withstanding personal attacks. Less than 5 minutes. Come forward. Seeing none.
That was quick.
That was quick. We've kind of talked this one to the ground. All right. Any questions for bond counsel, financial advisor, or staff? Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Gregorczyk, that we adopt resolution 2010, declaring the intent of the city of Gardner, Kansas to issue industrial revenue bonds in the approximate principal amount of $19,390,000, I'm sorry, for the purpose of financing a portion of the cost of acquisitions, construction, and equipping of a commercial facility within the city Main Street Marketplace. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Winters,
Abstain.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Resolution 2010 passes 4-0 with 1 abstaining. New business. New business item number 1. Consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the creation of a Main Street Marketplace Community Improvement District within the city of Gardner and authorizing the imposition of a Community Improvement District sales tax to be collected within such district. Again, this was part of the public hearing. Do we have any questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on ordinance 2601.
So moved. Second.
Motion Melton, second Moore, that we adopt ordinance 2601, authorizing the creation of the Main Street Marketplace Community Improvement District in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing the imposition of a Community Improvement District sales tax to be collected within such district. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Abstain.
Ordinance 2601 passes 4-0-1. New business on number 2, consider adopting an ordinance approving and adopting a redevelopment project plan for the redevelopment district in the city of Gardner, Kansas. Main Street Marketplace Redevelopment District Project Area 1. This has also been discussed during the public hearing. Is there any questions or any comments from the body on this? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on ordinance 2602.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, that we adopt ordinance 2602, approving and adopting a redevelopment project plan for a redevelopment district in the city of Gardner, Kansas, Main Street Marketplace Redevelopment District, Project Area 1. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Abstain.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Ordinance 2602 passes 4-0 with 1 abstaining. New business item number 3, consider adopting resolution approving the execution and delivery of a development agreement for a development project within the city of Gardner, Main Street Marketplace. Any comment on the development agreement from staff or from the applicant or from the body? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion on resolution 2011.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Moore, that we adopt resolution 2011, approving the execution and delivery of a development agreement for a development project within the city of Gardner, Main Street Marketplace. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Abstain.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Resolution 2011 passes 4-0 with 1 abstaining. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it. And thank you, applicants. Looking forward to having a new grocery store in our community. Thank you again.
Thanks, Joel.
All right, new business item number 4. Consider a petition for the formation of a benefit district for a sanitary lift station and related site improvements to serve the Tuscan Farms residential development, and adopt a resolution determining the advisability of certain internal improvements in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing and providing for the making of such improvements in accordance with the findings of the governing body and KSA 12-6A01 at SEC. And this is specifically for the Tuscan Farms Sanitary Lift Station Special Benefit District. We have a presenter this evening. Yes. Matthew Wolf, Finance Director. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. New business item number 4 and number 5 are actually related to each other. The developer and property owner for the proposed Tuscan Farms residential development has submitted 2 petitions to the city for the creation of special benefit districts. Tuscan Farms is an 82-acre multi-phase residential development. The first phase will include 40 single-family lots and a clubhouse area. And in the past, the city has experienced some issues with special benefit districts due to delinquent special assessments. We recognize that. And to help mitigate that risk, the developer has obtained a letter of credit in the amount of $339,000. The city can draw on this on all or part of this total amount of credit in the event of delinquency in the payment of special assessments for the project. So in the short term, the city's covered from a risk perspective because of the letter of credit we can draw on. In the long term, if the property ever goes delinquent, it actually will eventually go to auction, and then we can generally recuperate all delinquent property tax. So in the short term and long term, we're pretty much covered for risk.
Good.
And the first petition for new business item 4 is the creation of a special benefit district for the installation of sanitary sewer lift station related site improvements. The maximum cost of the improvements is $1.325 million. These improvements will benefit the entire property. Staff recommends adopting a resolution determining the advisability of making certain internal improvements in the city of Gardner, Kansas, setting forth certain findings in accordance with KSA 12-6A04, authorizing and providing for making the improvement in accordance with the findings of the governing body in the improvement district.
All right, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Any public comment on new business item number 4? And is the applicant here this evening? Yes. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Any public comment? Seeing none, I will ask for comments or questions from the body.
Matt, what exactly sets this benefit district apart from the previous benefit districts that didn't go so well?
The previous ones were more just unfortunate timing. Basically, the economy fell out. They stopped building houses, and then the developer was stuck with basically the special assessments they couldn't afford. This one, there is always going to be some risk with benefit districts, but just to protect the city in the short term so we don't have any unexpected delinquencies coming our way, we asked for them to need a letter of credit, and the developer, worked with the city to attain it. So they'll give us some coverage in the short term. So if we know what's going to happen, then we have about 12 months to basically plan how to adjust our budget to absorb the delinquency.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to make a comment, not a question. I just appreciate the developer's interest in the project to the point that he went out and got a letter of credit for $339,000. So I appreciate that. I think it shows that, you want this to come to fruition, and I think the houses that you've got on the horizon are going to be well needed in our community. So thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? On the other end?
So this is currently in the city limits,
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yes, it was annexed last year.
Okay. Is there any assurance that this would stay within the city, annexed within the city limits, or is there a way to ensure that through the agreement?
I believe,
think
unless
that
Ryan
that's
Dyke wants to correct me, that they would have to actually petition to de-annex.
Yeah, they would have to
So it'd have to go before council for them to de-annex from the city.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine then.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, yes?
The only
yes.
caveat I would add to that, and I'd have to go back and look at the annexation agreement, is if they do an annexation by agreement and we default on that agreement, then they could institute suit, but my recollection is there weren't any conditions attached to that annexation, but I'd probably go back and look at that.
Okay.
Okay. But it would still take an action of the governing body to de-annex, even in the case of a suit.
What I believe, and I don't recall if there is anything in the annexation agreement, but it basically means if we promise to do something and we do it on our end, then they could.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't recall that there were any express conditions. You know, with every annexation, you have to do a service agreement, but, you know, fair to deliver on that shouldn't be sufficient grounds to upend the annexation by itself. There should be an actual written agreement with express stipulations indicating that if the city fails to perform, then they have the right to petition for de-annexation. And I don't recall that being the case with this annexation.
Correct. Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on resolution number 2013.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Gorsuch, second Winters, that we adopt resolution 2013, determining,
2012.
oh, sorry, 2012, my apologies, 2012, determining the advisability of certain internal improvements to the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing and providing the making of such improvements in accordance with the findings of the governing body in KSA 12-6A01 at SEC, Tuscan Farm Sanitary Lift Station Special Benefit District. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters.
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Councilman Melton.
Yes.
Resolution 2012 passes. Thank you, Amy, for keeping me straight. New business item number 5, consider a petition for the formation of benefit district for certain infrastructure improvements to serve the Tuscan Farms residential development, and adopt a resolution determining the advisability of certain internal improvements to the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing and providing for the making of such improvement in accordance with the findings of the governing body and KSA 12-6A01 at SEC. And this is for the Phase 1 Infrastructure Special Benefit District of Tuscan Farms. Matt Wolf.
Since I kind of described the project in the last one, I'll just keep it really brief. The maximum cost for the second improvement district is $2.62 million. And it, like you mentioned before, this one's for the first phase, includes the road and other site improvements, while the previous one was actually a lift station that would benefit the entire property. So this one's just focused on that first phase.
Okay, and the letter of credit handles both this
Yes.
and the other benefit district,
It covers
correct?
both.
Okay. Any public comment on new business item number 5? Seeing none, any further questions from the body? All right. I believe we can have this vote without Councilman Melton. I will entertain a motion on new business item number 5 for resolution 2013.
Second.
Motion of Gorsuch, second Moore, that we adopt resolution number 2013, determining the advisability of certain internal improvements in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing and providing for the making of such improvements in accordance with the findings of the governing body in KSA 12-6A01 at SEC for the Tuscan Farm Phase 1 Infrastructure Special Benefit District. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Winters.
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk.
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Resolution 2013 passes 4-0. New business item number 6. Consider adopting a resolution establishing an account with the State of Kansas Municipal Investment Pool and repealing all other resolutions not in conformity herewith. You're a busy man tonight.
I am. This is actually just a housekeeping item.
Thank you, Mr. Bergdahl. Appreciate it.
The city uses the State of Kansas Municipal Investment Pool for the purpose of investing debt proceeds, and they require that whenever we make a change to it or establish a new version, we do it by resolution. And this is because we're switching the individuals authorized, so now it will be senior accountant Jackie Schultz, fiscal services manager Nancy Tornenden, and finance director Matthew Wolf are the new people authorized.
Okay, thank you. Public comment on new business item number 6. Okay. Questions for Matt on this particular investment pool? Assuming this is this is not the land bank, correct?
No, it's
This is not the land bank.
this is what the state prefers us to invest in.
Sure.
There's certain rules we have to meet if we want to invest somewhere else, but this is pretty much a go-to for a lot of municipalities.
Just want to make sure. I wanted to make sure they knew too that this has nothing to do with the land bank. All right. Any other questions? All right. I will entertain a motion on the resolution 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Winters, that we adopt Resolution 2014, resolution of the City of Gardner, Kansas, establishing an account with the State of Kansas Municipal Investment Pool and repealing all other resolutions not in conformity herewith. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilman Gregorski.
Yes.
Councilman Melton.
Yes.
Councilman Moore.
Yes.
Councilman Winters.
Yes.
Resolution 2014 passes 5-0. New business item number 7. Consider adopting an ordinance amending Title 14 floodplain and stormwater management, adopting chapter 14.01 and repealing chapter 14.10 relating to floodplain and stormwater management of the Gardner Municipal Code. And I believe that Tim McEldowney is making a presentation.
That.
From
Rare
Public
night
Works.
for Tim is coming up.
Yes, I know.
How long's it been since you got to present?
Far too long.
Well, that's what I was thinking too.
Good evening, Tim.
Mayor.
Yes.
Council. Not too far. So, I already lost my screen. This is why it's been a while since I've been here, I guess. Well, for presenting the stormwater ordinance, Chuck Dunley, the city attorney staff, and I have been working hard on putting this together. And the ordinance deals specifically with water quality, not water quantity, and with the idea to reduce and prevent pollution into our streams. And so when we put this together, we basically took Olathe's code, which is similar to what we wanted, and just have tailored it to match our needs. So to give a little context, I put some history on here. In 1972, Congress enacted the Clean Water Act, and then clear up till 1990, it took them to put together the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, Phase 1 requirements, which applied to only cities that were over 100,000 in population. Then in 1999, they implemented Phase 2 requirements, which applied to cities over 10,000. And so in 2010, the Gardner census put us over 10,000, and we were welcomed into the club of Phase 2 cities. Thankfully, the federal government works a little slow, and it took them until 2015 to say, okay, City of Gardner, you need to start meeting our requirements. And so at that time we applied for and were issued this is why they have so many acronyms, it's hard to spit all this out, but they issued a municipal separate storm sewer system permit, and that was through Kansas Department of Health and Environment. And there we go. So a little detail on the MS4 permit. Again, KDHE, let me back up for a second on the history part, just to give a bigger picture. So we have the EPA kind of creates the goals and objectives of the whole program. They then task the state with coming up with the process to implement that. And then it falls on us, the local cities and counties, to actually do the implementation and enforcement and do the real work of the program. So the permit that we had to get, and we currently have, essentially they established these 6 minimum control measures. The first 2 involve public involvement, and we're very fortunate that the Johnson County has a robust program, and they take care of almost all of this for us. They send out stuff in their magazine. They do email blasts. A lot of those are sent to us, and we forward those on to Gardner citizens. So we get credit for a lot of the work the county does. But I will say the Gardner Greenway, the Earth Day event, that actually contributes to our ability to meet these as well. The third one is illicit discharge. We passed an ordinance in 2016 to address that. Items 4 and 5, these are the ones that really form the bulk of what we're doing tonight, and I'll talk a little more detail about that in a second. The last item, pollution prevention, good housekeeping, that relates to basically us doing our own thing. So city property, they want to make sure that we're doing the same things that we're requiring developers and private entities to do. So we have to go in and inventory our facilities like public works maintenance, parks, the airport and determine what needs we have at those locations to maintain our water quality. So again, the ordinance 2603, really the bulk of it is MCM 4 and 5. So MCM 4 deals with land disturbance and erosion control. So any new development we have coming in, or it could be a redevelopment that disturbs more than 5,000 square foot of land, will now require a permit. And really the purpose of that, it gives us the ability to enforce the erosion control measures. So we'll actually enforce it before they make sure they have what they need up, before they are even allowed to start moving dirt. And more importantly, we'll be allowed to monitor them as they progress and make sure their erosion control is in place throughout
Is that
construction.
pretty much the netting and the things in the sewer to keep mud from going down? Is that
Yeah, the
basically
silt
what-
fence, I mean, you
silt
see
fence,
that, that's pretty basic stuff, and that's like the first thing you'll typically see. They'll wrap a site with silt fence, yeah.
Do we have many projects that are going on that are disturbing around 5,000 square feet? Because I think most lots are 8 to 10,000, aren't they? And they're already mandated for residential lots, is that correct?
They're not mandated. Currently, any development over 1 acre requires a state permit.
Okay, so now we'll have
So
that
if you're
on.
doing an individual, for instance, a lot in a development, if it's part of a larger development, it's treated the same.
Okay.
So that's why we set the 5,000, because we've had a lot of infill lots,
Yep.
just individual, and since they're less than an acre, we would have no control over them, and so we set it at 5,000, so we could
Cover that?
cover that.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The last item, number 5, is post-construction stormwater treatment, and that'll affect any new development that's greater than 1 acre. And so basically, they have to treat their stormwater runoff before it gets off their site. And then there's our system. And again, fortunately for us, Mark and APWA here locally have developed a manual, and it defines all the processes and the design issues, different best management practices that can be used. And so we're adopting that to help us. When the consultant comes in and wants to design something, they'll have to follow that manual, which pretty much every city in the metro area uses that manual as well. So that's at least a brief summary of what we're doing. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thanks, Tim, appreciate it. Any public comment on new business item number 7? There's a crowd of people anxious to come up to the podium.
I'm shocked.
All right, well, hearing none or seeing none, any questions? I had one, but I'll let you all speak on it first.
I just had one. What is the permit cost to that residential example that Rich spoke of?
We haven't settled on that yet.
Okay.
We just put in the ordinance that there will be a fee. I think typically there's a wide range of how that's done in other cities, but I would say probably like around $150 an acre.
Okay.
Will probably be close.
Okay. And that's just to cover the cost of getting that assessment or having that.
Well,
paperwork.
yeah, I mean, it's intended to cover our costs to review it and also perform inspections. I don't think, we won't come anywhere close to recovering that type of cost, but yeah, that's the intent.
Thank you, Tim.
So real quick, what is the cost to us if we don't implement this? I mean, there really is just, we have some backfill or some sediment possibly in our system, because I wonder about, here we're adding another cost onto a developer. I know everybody else does it, but
That's where I was going.
I just, my big fear is that, if everybody else is doing it and we lose an advantage, as I see it,
Well,
get
it's-
developers here.
It's a federal law.
Yeah.
We've got to adhere to federal law.
I understand, but I'm.
Yeah, the
And this is-
EPA has levied
Fines.
pretty significant fines.
Right.
KDOT has been fined,
Okay.
Leavenworth has been fined. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
It's-
Well,
yeah.
And isn't this just a step towards, our long-term goal of full NPDS
This is the
compliance.
last step.
This is the
As
final
I
step.
said, we started in 2015. They allowed you to kind of phase it in, and this is
Mhm.
the last major step for us to be fully implemented in the phase 2 requirements.
Okay, well, that's, and the builders tell me I'll blame the feds, so.
Well,
I'm with that.
I mean, it's
I can
required
pass
that,
the buck.
it's not
No,
required
it's-
that we charge. I mean, I guess
Well,
that's
that-
negotiable.
Yeah, I don't, I mean, and really, how much work are we talking about on our end, just out of
Yeah.
curiosity? What's involved for you guys? 'Cause
Yeah,
it's-
it's tough to put a number on it until we really get into it. I mean, I would say right off the bat, we'll be spending at least half to probably 3/4 FTE just to get it off the ground. It won't be long before we'll need a person full-time to manage the program. Ah!
Yeah,
I knew that
so
was coming.
moving away from the full-time employee support, what's the downstream, no pun intended, but what's the downstream cost to filters and everything that it's going to
Yeah, I was
take
gonna ask you what actually it
Yeah,
take to treat.
the operation side of it?
stormwater.
Well, I talked to a guy that we actually have on contract to help us with these things, and he makes a case that there's really, it's a wash between implementing, because you're reducing the amount of stormwater infrastructure that you need by, if you're doing bioswales or that type of thing. But the one thing you do have is the ongoing maintenance of all this, because if you don't maintain them, they don't
Yeah.
work.
Exactly.
And we have requirements in here that there's maintenance agreements with developers that they have to maintain these facilities, which also means we have to inspect it. Somebody has to make sure that they're being maintained, so.
So every, basically, long and short is that every new development is going to have its own stormwater scheme that has to be put into place, has to be approved by the city of Gardner, and has to conform with the federal standard.
Yes.
And it's gonna have to include things like filtering or mitigation of flow or something like that to get as much of the sediment out of it as possible before it hits the storm sewer.
Right. So to answer you, I can remember the original question. I mean, the number 10% has been thrown out a lot, that it's probably a 10% increase in cost.
That's a chunk, man.
It is
You
a
guys
chunk.
are, I mean, you guys aren't making that much on some of these properties that they're.
Well, that's a question, that's a political question. When we get to the point of actually talking about fine, or
Yeah,
not
no,
fines,
I understand.
but
I'm just,
fees, but I think that from the standpoint of the ordinance, we have to have the ordinance, because
I get it. I just.
we've got to conform with federal law.
Right, but,
There's no way around it, unfortunately.
this is a federal law that wasn't passed by Congress. This was passed by bureaucrats at EPA,
No,
right?
the Clean Water Act was passed by Congress.
Right.
I don't know
And
the
that mandated
exact
this.
trail, but yeah,
Well-
it's originally the Clean Water Act, and how it,
But yeah, there's,
How it
the
got down
acts
to
are
the
passed,
EPA
but then the
with this,
bureaucrats
I'm
make the
not-
rules behind the scenes,
Yeah.
and so. Right. Well, thank you. I'll bring it up with my congressman. And my senator, what the heck I'm gonna call them too.
All right. Okay, any other questions, comments, concerns, manifestos?
I'd just like to thank you for the work you put into this.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for that.
There's a
well,
lot
I
of.
had more hair when we started with it.
Yeah. There's a lot of effort
Well, we
here.
all did. Yeah, you're dealing with the feds, I get it.
Yeah, this
All
is
right.
not an easy topic.
No, it is not. It's like dealing with FAA, right?
Yep.
Ugh. All right, I will entertain a motion then on resolution ordinance number 2603.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Baldwin, that we approve ordinance 2603, an ordinance amending Title 14, floodplain and stormwater management, adopting Chapter 14.01, and repealing Chapter 14.10 in its entirety, relating to floodplain and stormwater management of the Gardner Municipal Code. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes.
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Ordinance number 2603 passes, and we won't get fined, at least not for a little while.
Don't say that.
Council updates. Does staff have anything for council? I will start with Gons Garcia, the Utilities Director, who's been rather, pensive over there. How you doing, sir?
Pretty good. Yeah, 2 Fridays ago, there was a item in the Friday Minute memo related to St. John Water Interconnection.
Yes.
And I got a question regarding the rate. But basically, to summarize, in early 2018, there was the city repaired a 12-inch water main break. And the line runs west along 175th Street, crosses Waverly, and is the only source of water for St. John. That year, utilities included a secondary water line for the subdivision, and we estimated a cost of $172,000. But not knowing the rate of growth for this area is very hard to justify the $172,000. So right after the water main break, we contact Water 7, and they told us they have a 6-inch line that runs east on 175th Street. So after discussion, they give us 2 quotes, and they said that we can have an emergency interconnection for $37,954, and that will split in 2. So our portion will be $18,977.
I like that deal.
So comparing that to 172, I think that's a good low cost option.
Absolutely.
Even if
Thank-
I'm bad at math, that's good.
All right, well,
Is
that's great. Do we need to?
Are we starting on that right
take-
away then?
yes,
or we-
oh,
yeah.
Laura?
So the email, Gons just gave you the background. I sent you an email saying, I prefer that this was such a big change
Mhm.
before signing off, that you're good with that. So that's the question.
Yeah.
Are you good with this
Do we have general consensus
change?
on this?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, I think so.
those people need water in emergency.
I do have a quick question. Is there any compatibility issues or studies that have to be done with the?
Right now, the city has, I believe, 4 interconnections with water. So,
Right.
So we're good.
So
Yeah,
we
across
have
the street
additional.
from me, we took over, so.
And we're also in the process of revising that agreement.
Yes.
And
I think we're
thanks,
going to be
Gons,
having
for
a
the-
much closer relationship with Water 7 going forward in
Well, we usually,
several areas.
well, I have for the past
Yes.
several years.
Yes, yes.
And Gons, thanks for answering the question.
Yes, thank you very much. So we have direction now to staff to get that put together. All right. Kelly, anything else from development?
We're still working on Larry said review the minutes of things he said before. We're still working on the RFP for the public safety building, and we are still working on a review of the 2018 IRC. So those are still, stay tuned for that. I think he let you know in the Friday Minute memo about our Waverly Plaza meeting between the neighborhood and the developers. Very good meeting, and hopefully
No
it's
blood?
helpful. No blood.
No.
Everyone
That's a
survived.
win.
Great.
Everyone got a chance to speak multiple times, so
Good.
I think they appreciated it. And I think he also told you about some issues with some of the mobile homes in the mobile home park, and working towards getting those upgraded. So unless you have any questions, I'm sure Larry would have probably thought of a whole bunch of other things to tell you
Oh.
about.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the update, Kelly. Public Works, Michael Kramer.
Yeah, so wanted to bring you back to the February 8th Friday Minute memo. And just, so we met with USD 231 that week. Mayor, Laura, Chief, myself, and Tim McEldowney met with USD 231 with Pam Strantham?
Stranathan.
I have a hard time pronouncing that. I
It's all right.
apologize. And Bruce Crackle, who's in their operations department. And we basically reviewed Santa Fe and Waverly Road and some other traffic issues around Buckeye and such. And those are all pretty well summarized, I think, in the Friday Minute memo, and kind of what the next steps are and what we're doing moving forward. But the one thing that's in there as well that council had asked about was, are there going to be signals at 175th or Santa Fe and Waverly? And our current traffic projections and stuff don't show them being warranted until later, and I think we sent an email out kind of explaining that, and I just basically wanted to bring your attention to those items. and let you know that, that answer is in there. We will be looking at it, further. We use, our consultant used general growth numbers and such, and general development numbers for the development that's now Waverly Plaza. And so as Waverly Plaza moves forward, we'll get specific traffic counts and stuff from them and studies, and we may take another look at those signals and if they're warranted now. And then the Friday just after that, so Wednesday, Thursday, we've had lots of snowstorms and ice storms over the last several months, and it's making up for all those sunny winters we've had in the past, I guess. But Friday the 8th, the school was actually closed due to the weather. They reached out to our Public Works Department and said, hey, we're trying to open up for basketball and events this evening and stuff at the high school. Can you help us by providing us some additional salt? And our guys and Jody's staff went kind of above and beyond just giving them material. They actually went out and spread the material for them so that we could activate it with the liquid calcium chloride and actually melt the stuff rather than throwing just the salt out. And so we helped them with, we went out, we spread the material on all their drives and parking, and then later that day went back and helped them with actually clearing those lots. And so, real hats off to our guys, Jody, and it wasn't even anything that cost-wise, they were happy to reimburse us for the material, but it was so little in material, and so I think they were very appreciative of staff going out and being able to help them open up and have those events.
That's partnership right there.
Right.
I really appreciate the efforts from our staff on that.
And then, and just in general, our staff, both Public Works, the guys in Gonza's utility line maintenance division and parks, they've just done a great job, I think, in keeping our streets as safe as they can be in this weather.
That's great.
And then this last Friday memo, again, I had a little update in there. Our sanitary sewer project has been submitted to the FAA for approval through their construction portal. And so we're waiting on those approvals, and then we'll be able to go out for bid, hopefully. And then the last, next to last, so Tuscan Farms on those benefit districts, it's very common and typical that once a city has those benefit districts in hand, that they move forward with engineering and that contract then shifts underneath us, since we have the ability now to pay for it. And so we'll be working on those agreements with Clint Burkell's engineer, which is Alan Brandrews, on finalizing the design plans and the construction drawings and construction engineering. And so you'll be seeing those agreements come forward in the near future. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank Tim and Ryan Dink's staff on developing the stormwater ordinance. There's a lot of work that goes into complying with all the federal regulations and making sure that everything's in the best order it can be. And ultimately it will create not just this, but the previous ordinances and our MS4 permit in general. They do create more staffing needs and requirements. A lot of the things that you see in there that, it says we'll do this, it says we'll go out and inspect those things, and one of the really important things for our staff is that we go out and we do the inspections and we get them well documented. Because even if you've done everything right, if we don't have the documentation in place, it can cause issues. So again, thanks to Tim and Ryan's staff. I really appreciate it.
I think what you just mentioned falls under the heading of unfunded mandate. I think it'd be awfully nice if the feds would kick in for some of the cost of those things. Yes, but that's kind of a pipe dream. They like to tell people what to do, but don't give them any way to pay for it. That's my soapbox for tonight. I'm going to move on to the chief. How's it going, Chief Pruding? Give us any updates on the Justice Center?
Yeah, everything they've got, they started putting tile and all the soffits are in for the lockers, and it's really starting to come together. The only thing that is missing that will really define the building when you walk through it is the courtyard glass. It's supposed to go in this week, but everything looks fantastic. I mean, it's going to be a great facility.
I'm really looking forward to getting over there again to take a look at the progress.
Me too. And the ceiling grid, and I mean, everything's coming together really well.
That's great. All right, City Clerk, anything from your perspective? I think I know that there is.
Yes, sir. Those of you on the UAC and Airport Advisory Board Selection Committee should have received emails earlier today requesting your availability for the interviews necessary to fill the open current positions. For the Airport Advisory Board, there's currently one open seat with a separate selection process having been started for the 2 additional seats set to open at the end of this month. Should you be able to conduct interviews and select 2 candidates to be voted on at the next regular city council, this will not have an effect on quorum requirements. However, should there be any issues with this process, the Airport Advisory Board will no longer have a quorum, and those whose terms are ending will need to have their terms extended. The process for filling the seat which is currently open will need to be restarted, as only one extension is allowed per governing body rules of procedure, and this extension has already been utilized and elapsed. For the Utility Advisory Commission, there are only 2 applicants to fill the 3 advertised open positions. Per City Attorney Dank and governing body rules of procedure, members of the council may recommend an individual to serve in such situations. You'll receive an email with additional instructions regarding this process tomorrow morning, and that will go to the entire governing body.
Great.
An additional position on the UAC will be advertised as one of the commissioners has resigned. As this position was not part of the original postings for these positions, a separate selection process is necessary.
We've got some work to do, gentlemen. I mean, it's pretty clear. And these are commissions. These are some of these are not something we can keep from meeting. UAC is pretty critical when it comes to our utilities function, and then obviously the Airport Commission is also in that same boat. So, anything else anybody wants to offer? Okay. Finance Director Wolf, you've been speaking a lot tonight. Yeah, you probably should. Yeah. City Attorney Ryan Dank.
I do have a few things. One, I looked at the annexation agreement with Tuscan Farms. There is a provision in there that if we materially breach the annexation agreement, there are certain things that we committed to do. Really, all that was to consider their applications for different things, benefit district being one of them, rezoning that's already been granted, that they could petition, not that they have a right to de-annexation, but they could petition to do so. So if we default, then they could come back. But short of that, they'd have to go through the regular de-annexation process, which certainly would come back to you anyway. A couple of other things, the legislature has been taking up some topics, and I've been getting regular requests for comment on legislation that uniquely affects local governments. And I wanted to touch on a couple of those. One of them, because there's been a request for comment and feedback, both from the League and from the City Attorneys Association, which would be due back tomorrow by noon. If we choose to give them feedback, and that is on telecommunications. The telecommunications industry is taking another swing at right-of-way legislation. If you remember all the work we did when they passed the last Telecommunications Act, adopting franchise agreements, right-of-way agreements, well, the telecommunications industry ultimately didn't like what came out of that. They still think it's too difficult for them to get their permits to construct towers. Really, it's all again aimed towards 5G, right? And so there's been a lot of discussion, committee discussion, testimony, particularly within the last week. And what the feedback that we're all getting is that they are going to scale back local government's ability to regulate use of the right-of-way to some extent. Also, they're probably going to scale back the ability of local governments and their right to charge franchise fees, which, you know, doesn't recognize that these local industries, quite in my opinion, and their use and occupancy of the right-of-way costs local governments money. Because when they dig a pothole and they patch it, Michael can attest to this, it's not going to be as good as when it was originally a regular new construction. And so your maintenance costs are going to be higher, and that's really what the franchise fees were intended to address. So anyway, if there's any feedback that you all have for the comment period, which is tomorrow, then I'd accept that. The other piece of legislation that I've gotten feedback from, Councilman Melton will probably be interested in this. There's a legislation to amend the Open Meetings Act requiring that each and every body which is subject to Tacoma would be recorded, and a recording of that would be made available within 24 hours of the completion of the meeting. Now, I don't think the feedback is, again, no one's really contesting in terms of like you all doing it. A lot of the pushback has been, and a lot of it's been from smaller municipalities.
Sure, the rural communities.
I can see that.
Right, it's these smaller committees, you know, they got 2 or 3 people on a committee, and they don't have an IT person who's available to be there and record it. And I think we don't record all of our committees, do we?
I don't think so.
Right. So there's additional expense associated with that. We're not talking about live streaming everything. We're just talking about having a recording of each and every one of those meetings and having them immediately available to the public. So any feedback that you all want me to pass on, I can take that and pass it on.
What would constitute a recording? Would it be an audio recording, or would it have to be video, or?
The legislature is proposing either an audio recording or a video recording.
I mean, anymore, everybody's got a phone or something that can just, you know, record. I mean, and then even if they just live streamed it, it would just be out. I mean, it could be just live streamed right to a page, and
you'd have bandwidth for that.
And if it could be audio, that could
or
be,
if it's just audio, I mean, it could just be recorded on your device and then uploaded later. So, I mean,
So it's not I would not consider that necessarily an undue burden.
No.
And in the spirit of openness and transparency, I mean, obviously we've pushed very hard. You've pushed very hard for, you know, having those meetings available immediately. And so I think that it makes sense as long as it's not an undue burden on those smaller municipalities. Everybody's got a voice recorder on their smartphone these days.
Yeah, and you know, again, you know, I've got other clients that are smaller who have more of an interest in that legislation.
Sure.
It doesn't seem that hard to throw a tape recorder
have them call me
in the room and put a tape in there, but just wanted you to be aware of that legislation. I didn't anticipate, in light of this body's stance on live streaming, that they had concerns about that one. But any comments, particularly on the telecommunications piece, then I'd be happy to pass that on as well.
Well, my comments on the telecommunications piece, but.
Well, I think just like when we approved the legislative agenda, that we want local control. So we want to push for that in any and all cases.
And we need to be able to consider our own internal circumstance when it comes to being able to regulate our right of way. I mean, it is the city's asset. It is owned by the citizens. It is not the necessarily free and clear for any private entity to put their stuff on it.
And I'd tell Kansas if they want to make that law to pay us, but then they would just tax us more and
That's true.
Pay us back.
That's true.
But I'd rather keep it at the local level and not have state mandates be foisted upon the cities. And you make a very good point about, tearing up roads to put in infrastructure that's not owned by the city. We don't manage that, and they're tearing up our assets, our infrastructure, to put in that private line, that private conduit. So.
Well, we do have restoration requirements.
Yes.
But again, when Michael, you can speak to this. When they come in and do that, it's never quite the same, is my understanding.
Yeah, and definitely having issues with, if having a permit and it's an actual requirement on the permit gives us some authority and to at least even know who's out there doing the work and follow up. And especially with the 5G, I mean, and with the communications that they want to bring in, put either a pole or attach to one of Gonza's existing utility light poles, and that, we want some assurance that it's structurally sound, et cetera.
So come falling down or anything like that on people's heads. And of course, you've got load requirements on those poles and those lines. And they have to be able to adhere to those as well. So,
is there any long-term outlook that this is a slippery slope with other utilities wanting to go that same direction?
Yeah, well, the legislature isn't talking about that, but there are non-discrimination provisions under federal law.
Right.
And so, we're talking about telecommunications now, but that I just had this conversation today with one of my co-counsel. They're just coming after another stream of revenue for local governments and franchise fees.
I agree.
First it was property tax cap, which actually we've been fairly successful in navigating. But even Laura just jumped in her seat.
It's that property tax cap language that got her shakes.
Anyway, so I'm concerned that if they try to limit this legislation and restrict municipalities and their ability to charge franchise fees unique to telecommunications, that everybody else who's paying it is going to jump on that non-discrimination language and try to say, I'm being inappropriately discriminated against under federal law.
So we're talking about electrical utilities, water
Everything.
Utilities.
Right. The
gas
KCC has no choice because
exactly. I mean, you could.
Yeah.
It's
Right away full.
It's a concern.
Yeah, and now we don't have any control over our right of way. That's a big problem. So, all right.
I think I've heard consensus.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yes,
appreciate that.
not a problem. Interim city administrator.
No, everybody else is very, very busy.
Yeah,
Go team.
getting a lot of things done. Yeah,
Go team.
that's wonderful. I love the partnership also that we heard tonight. So.
Yeah.
Councilor Gorsuch, I'll start from my left and move to my right.
I just have one item. I just wanted to call everybody's attention to the comment that, and his name just slipped my mind, with the Price Chopper project.
Joel Riggs?
Yes, thank you, Joel Riggs. He said that he was, he had positive comments about staff and working with staff, and I just wanted to bring that back to the surface and say thank you, staff, for your support on this particular project, but I know that's just an example of the great projects that our staff supports that may not come up to council immediately. But to have a developer and a contractor basically say that, and I just really appreciated that. So thank you, staff, for all y'all's work. I think that's a big, great, beautiful project that I'm looking forward to seeing to come to fruition and supporting. I love shopping at Price Chopper versus Walmart. That's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you. Council Vice President.
So today I sent the interim city administrator some information. Through my day job, I found an airport in Eldon, Missouri, so that they actually have private hangars at their airport. So I contacted them. I talked to them about how they structure that. And so I sent all that to the interim city administrator to go over with staff to look at if we can implement a similar system so we can actually, people could build and buy their own hangars at our airport. So we would kind of take the stress off of us as being the landlord, but then they just pay the, there's a fee, so much per square foot for each hangar. So we could actually have a development or a developer or individuals go out there and just buy their own hangar, put it in, and pay so much a year for the square footage that they're using. And then if they default, then the city gets the hangar and we could resell it. So I think that we have a unique opportunity to be able to do that. And then the other thing is Johnson County, the Airport Commission just raised the hangar rents. So we have an opportunity to do that. And we could really, I think that the cost is right there where somebody could come in, develop some stuff for us and rent out those hangars and have really nice facilities out there that would increase the overall value of the airport.
So just to clarify,
yep,
Rich, because I think that some folks might get a little confused about, well, how does this work? So you're talking about having plots of land. Those plots of land, X number of square feet, and on that plot of land, you can designate a hangar location. So the hangar location would be on that piece of property. An individual would lease that plot of land from the city for X number of dollars.
So much per year.
Per year.
For a 20-year lease.
All right. And then they would build their own hangar to city standards on that property, and they would own that asset.
They would own, they would lease,
minus the land.
yeah, they
Correct.
basically lease the ground underneath, own the building above.
Okay, so this is kind of similar to a townhome kind of
more or less.
And model.
Yeah, and so what the nice thing is they have systems in place, and this is what I liked about using the Eldon model, is they already have it figured out where if they have a problem tenant, they know how they're going to handle it. They have all that stuff written out, so they already know
part of the agreement.
Yeah, it's part of the agreement. I mean, it's a pretty slick deal, and it's all spelled out. So there's not, the only thing we got to look at is what's the legality differences between Kansas and Missouri on how we handle everything, and then how we want to structure the entire program for the city of Gardner, because they don't allow with them they don't allow any subleasing, right? But we could change that where we could, if somebody wanted to come in and build a rows of hangars, then they would sublease that out to individuals and handle all the management on their own. They could do everything without the city being involved, as long as the checks are clear and we're good.
Well, and also it depend on the standards that are
Yeah.
they would have to follow the standards that we already have in
Sure,
place.
exactly.
But-
So I think it solves a problem and allows us to kind of not be in the hangar business anymore, at least not fully, where we can service more people and have more people coming to town by allowing somebody else to build those hangars. So it's one less thing we have to deal with.
Are you talking just for new ones, or?
Yeah, just for new ones.
Not
They would build
doing
all
anything
brand
with
new.
the existing ones?
Well, I mean,
keep
if
those
somebody
as is?
wanted to come in and take over that, I guess they could. I mean, if they.
You can take over management of the existing hangars and
Right.
basically buying them from the city.
Yeah, I mean, if we're up for that, I don't know why we wouldn't entertain that idea. But I think the thing is, because it was already set up with them, it was just kind of a lot easier, and there's already this template there. So that was one of the interesting things I found. And there was a huge hangar that I sent to Lee that somebody was selling there for $95,000, but then you had to pay so much per square foot every year
for the
per the lease.
Yeah.
So.
Interesting.
But anyway, so I imagine we'll see some stuff. I just kind of wanted to tell everybody that I'd found that. It was kind of a neat thing that hopefully we can get it figured out and maybe make it work for us.
I wonder how many municipalities in Kansas follow that model.
This is
Or
the
if
first
there
one
are
I
any.
found, and I
Or
found
if there are
it through
any.
my day job, just looking for
There,
stuff to
yeah,
sell.
it's a pretty common model across the whole country. I mean, it's not unique to that one location. I think in a lot of places, I don't know that it's as common in a municipal airport as it is in a private airport or a public use private airport.
Sure.
Because there's a lot of we talked about it at lunch, the through the fence operations and things like that. Like Benton I think it's Benton, Kansas. Stearman Field down there is
Near Wichita.
yeah, near Wichita. It's a through the fence operation, and they have people actually live in homes attached to their hangars, and in some cases live in the hangar themselves. They have residences built in that way.
There's
So.
some real avid flyers right there.
Yeah. So there, you know, at first blush, it sounds like a great idea. We would have to probably change our airport master plan to accommodate something like that. We'd have to plat the airport so we could see where we could have these plots of land.
That was the other thing. The information they sent me was they have a company they're already working with that does that, that's familiar with the FAA and all the regs, so they sent that information as well. So it was in that, it should be in that email, is it not in there? I'll look again. They were supposed to send it if they didn't.
Well, one of the things that I've seen with this too, that's kind of unfortunate, might not work here because we tend to be pretty particular about aesthetics around here. But one of the things that you'll find when you fly into one of these places is all the hangars look different. They're different heights, different colors, different shapes and sizes and everything. So I think if we did something like that, our
design standard.
Our history would be that we would have to have some kind of design standard to keep people in line somewhat.
Go through planning commission every time.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you could just have whoever decides to put the hangars in, have them do a plan development, an aviation plan district or something like that, and there would be a conforming use. Am I using the correct terms, Kelly?
Yes, you are. Pretty impressive.
Man,
Okay.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. So, hey, I've been around this development thing for a while now. I might become a planner after I get out of this seat. All right. Anything else?
Yes. One last thing. So I don't know if any of you guys know, but Clint Barney had to resign from UAC because he is moving, and I was just going to tell him thank you for everything he's done, and it's sad to see him move before he got to be on the council, because I've been joking with him for about 3 or 4 years that he's going to be on the council. In fact, I told him when he called me and told me he was leaving, I said, you haven't been on the council yet, so you can't move. But he said something about his family and wife and stuff was going, and he had to go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't teach him after that. But anyway, so I just want to say thanks to Clint, and hopefully things go good in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So that's all I got.
All right. Lee Moore.
I'd just like to remind everybody to remove the snow and ice from the front of your sidewalks and public rights of way. I'm getting some feedback from residents that maybe some people aren't taking that so seriously, and it hampers. It hampers. In some cases, the sidewalks and whatnot are the only way that somebody can get around. And when we don't clean that stuff off in a timely manner, they can't get around. So something to think about for everybody. It's not, there's no action we can take from here to fix this. And we've talked about it and kicked it around for a long time. One of these days, maybe somebody can put together a volunteer corps.
Working on it.
I know we had a mayor that ran on something like that at one point.
Snow Angels, yeah, and I think a Snow Angel program in Gardner would be very nice, and I think would be very welcomed here.
That was the second thing we already looked into.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to point out is there are a couple of resources as far as outside organizations listed on our page.
Okay, great.
And that's all I have.
All right.
I
Dr.
want to thank staff, all that's involved in clearing the snow and putting the salt down. I know they're working lots of hours and they've got more coming up. I wondered if you could just real briefly speak on the process for repairing the roads. I hear a lot of chatter about the potholes and those things. And also if you could talk about 56 Highway or Main Street through town, how that's...
It's going to get fixed when it snows again.
Was it?
there's potholes on 56.
So I've heard.
So yeah, 56, and just so you know, we do contact KDOT quite regularly just to let them know the volume of calls that city staff receives, and the KDOT has been here even in the last 2 weeks and done repairs in between the storms, but really one storm and the stuff they're doing is gone. But again, 56 highway through the city, which is, the worst offender in the city, is a KDOT right-of-way and roadway, and per our maintenance agreement with them, both snow removal and then repairs, et cetera, are their responsibility. And they're well aware of the issues and are dealing with them as time and weather allow. With our own city streets, please do contact the city, Public Works, and we try and be responsive and get out just as soon as weather allows to repair potholes, etc. And one thing I will say on KDOT too is they are looking at trying to program a actual major project to come through and actually repair. That being said, that's another project that's years in the making. But I think as you hopefully saw in the KDOT update and press release that came out last week, they have funded a lot of major maintenance and projects, and by funded, they're not removing as much of the revenue that was originally slated for KDOT.
Thank you.
I hope somewhere in there I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, quite a bit there. Councilman Baldwin.
Everybody else pretty much hit the highlights, so I just wanted to thank staff for everything, and that's it.
All right. Hey, that's short and sweet.
Well, everybody's covered the
Okay,
details.
well, the only thing I got is we now have an opening date for the Hampton Inn. It looks like it's going to be the 25th of March. So I don't know if you've had a chance to go by there, but it looks like they're starting to do some cleanup outside, and they're getting ready for the big day, which is now a little bit more than a month away. And that means that we're looking at events that will be scheduled for that particular venue. And the first big event from the City of Gardner's perspective is going to be the State of the City Address. And we're looking at a couple of dates right around Tax Day. I did not have anything to do with Tax Day, but it's somewhere in that week. So we don't have the exact date. We'll have that finalized in the next couple of days. But 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, we will have an announcement very soon on the State of the City Address. And can I talk about the theme of the State of the City?
Who's going to be speaking?
All right. Well, no, it won't be. It won't be you.
Well, people are going to show up then.
No, the theme of the talk this year is going to be building bridges.
Mm.
And so
is this like, are we getting one at Moonlight Road? Is that what you're saying?
We're building all sorts of bridges, man. And we're going to be talking about all that and how bridge building is going to be a real theme of the next several years of this governing body and of this city. So
metaphorically, or
all kinds. Yeah, we'll even give people, put Lego bridges on people's tables. I guess
This sounds like it's going over budget.
They can build bridges while they're listening to a speech about building bridges. But no, it's going to be a great event. I'm really looking forward to helping open the Gardner Conference Center, and we've got some really neat things coming.
Were there pool passes for the pool for governing body members?
Yes, there are pool passes for governing body members. Yeah, didn't you get the email?
No, I mean at the Hampton.
Oh, the Hampton pool. I cannot speak for the Hampton pool.
Ask about that, right?
Negotiate. Anyway, that's all I had. Thank you again for the staff for all the work that they put in on those waves of snowstorms. I guess we got another one coming tomorrow, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Mother Nature's making up for the last 4 years. But
water shortage might be
Well,
easy to bypass this year?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't
we've had a
know.
lot of moisture.
It's not the problem, isn't the moisture, the problem is getting it treated. Anyway, with that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion Moore, second Melton, we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying
Aye.
aye. All opposed, any abstentions? We are adjourned.
Sweet.